Yvonne says that Hazim has class this morning, so she's home with the kids, but she's going to log on.
Yeah, I just saw Razan out in the parking lot. Dr. Hamilton's moved over to Frank Nanny Hall, so he wouldn't have to move furniture this morning. I just saw that group. They all just got out of their cars and came in, so I saw Hazim just a minute ago. So
she told me she was going to give them something to snack on and let them watch a movie, and hopefully they'd be quiet.
Well, that sounds good. You can always mute her in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. This is week 5, June 18 through 24. You're at home today, and we're zooming on case study 16A. Your discussion board for this week is Miriam, chapters 1 through 4. 3 of you have already done that. Just as a reminder, a housekeeping item, I have 3 of you who have not uploaded your reflection from the first case study. Remember, it's just 1 page long. And if you need to remember the rubric, I have that share screen, desktop, share screen. All right, let me get out of that and that. And all right, so over here in, let me move that. Over here in case study materials, I have a document that will help you with that reflection. It's only 1 page long, but make sure you do me a reflection and upload it in the Dropbox from last time's case study. So today our case study is 16A. Teen diagnosis and intervention. And so where we start looking at qualitative and quantitative data. And so here is our qualitative data. Here is our quantitative data. Excuse me. We start with it. And it's a survey. And it's on a Likert 5-point scale. So there's the first thing that I hope somebody figured out, but we'll see in the presentations this morning. And here's your qualitative information, qualitative data. This is from interviews. All right, so that sets us up to get started this morning. All right, so who is going to be our first presenter this morning?
I think we probably could, since Razan doesn't appear to be on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Tammy, you going to be the host?
No, MA.
MA is going to be the host?
Uh-huh.
All right. All right, I'm going to make MA the host more. I'm going to make MA the host, yes. I'm going to stop my share.
Are you recording for Razan?
I'm recording, yes.
It's recording.
Okay. Great.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I think she's on. Didn't it say Hazim? She might be on his.
Yeah, she is. She's on.
Okay, great.
Okay. So good morning. Carmen, now present a diagnosis of case study 16A entitled Diagnosis and Intervention. And we will, Tammy.
That's right. Yeah, okay. I think, there we go. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to control the slides over here, and there we go. I apologize. I'm over here thinking, why is my computer not working? Because you've got control, MA. Well, we want to start with our case overview, and on the case team diagnosis and intervention. It is a qualitative study of an organization and the team effectiveness with some quantitative data there in the Likert scale. But the data is 11 question survey answered by 12 people plus an open-ended response. We did want to note that it is all self-report data. We also want to note that there is one question about job satisfaction that was only answered by 10 people instead of the 12. And so Carmen will reference that when she goes over some of the data. We also wanted to just be clear up front about some assumptions that we made. First of all, that this is we're making an assumption that this is a 12-person sample from the organization, and we're also making the assumption that John is the CEO. He was referenced especially in the open-ended responses.
Okay, so reading over the questions and the responses, what we did were we picked out some themes in the survey, and we used the categories of job satisfaction, team cohesion, and leadership. We felt like 4 of the questions reflected more on leadership, 3 questions reflected more on team cohesion, and questions 2, 3, 4, and 5 reflected more on job satisfaction or individual job satisfaction. Looking at the graph, when we put it on the chart, you can clearly see that team cohesion was the main issue here. So our central theme today is going to be lack of team cohesion. So questions 9, 10, and 11 dealt with handling conflict openly, sharing important information with each other, and encouraging each other. You'll notice that the leadership theme was, their average was, overall average was 3.83. The overall average of team cohesion was 2.83. The overall average for job satisfaction was 3.65. If you take into consideration question number 5 didn't have but 10 responses. If we recalculated that and put those 2 as a neither agree or disagree in that category, that would bring that down to a 2.5. So that one comes down just a little bit more. But anyway, the category with the highest average was job satisfaction with a 4.3 on I know how my team contributes to goals. So what we have here is individuals that understand their goals, they understand what they're supposed to do, but they're still a little bit vague in regards to working with each other, communication, and team collaboration.
Okay, and so then we're going to break down our analysis and the survey response theme into 4 categories. The leadership, which really rated quite high. The mission is clear. There's a clear understanding of the team's role, knowledge of how my team contributes to the organizational goals, and goals for our team are clear. So those things actually ranked quite high, and so we want to give a shout out to the leadership. The culture, there seemed to be kind of an indifferent pride in the organization. The team members share information only when necessary, moderate job satisfaction, and in fact, when that was recalculated, actually went down, adding in the 2 responses that weren't given just as neither positive or negative. And then the team is cliquish. That actually comes from the open responses. But these are things that we drew out from the survey responses, and then MA is going to go over a couple of themes that came out from the open response question, of which I had to steal the team or cliquish to go under the culture, but she'll reflect back those open-ended themes.
So based on the analysis from the what Carmen presented earlier and Cameron presented a few minutes ago, reference to the case and responses, we looked at the team performance data that was qualitative data that was received from the surveys and the team cohesive, I want to say this, but cohesive abilities. So we recognized that under team performances, had high performing teams that actually consistently achieved goals, and they felt they were always on top. Then there was the times where we had to wait for decisions to be given, and that would put would more likely put in more decisions. Also, as Tammy stated, John's a great leader, and is what they stated, and that we have great potential for negative attitudes. So that's kind of explains some of the part that. And then there was those who says that they wish they knew more, and that there was updates to group. Sometimes they felt like there was a lack of detail. When it came to the team cohesion, parts in the circle or otherwise were sometimes feeling that they were ignored. And then also, secondly, some explained in being cohesive from the survey, they support each other, and no one had their back, and someone did not have trust, or there was trust issues. And as Tammy earlier, there's the team cliquish that some felt that others were either lazy, or others felt that the others were given too much information and they wasn't really included on the inside the circle of knowing what's actually happening in the organization.
Okay, so excuse me, let me move us over to the other side. So what we did was, again, we looked at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and we looked at threats and answering the questions at the beginning of the survey. We thought a SWOT would do that, so we began to analyze what their strengths were, and we came up with a clear understanding of the role. Again, the goals were clear, the team goals were clear, and they understood how their team contribution connects to organizational goals. Looking at the weakness, it had mostly to do with the collaboration within the team. They didn't handle conflict openly. They didn't share information with each other. They don't encourage each other. And therefore, they have a lack of organizational pride and job satisfaction. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses, we decided that opportunities for improvement would include quality of team meetings, improving those, educating the team on the connection to the mission. They didn't seem to have a clear idea of how the mission was connected to what they were doing. More team building. There's opportunities for conflict resolution as well. Typically, when a team is not communicating with each other, it's because there's some conflict there. So resolution would be a good idea. Also, organization history and purpose. We felt that the CEO, we're assuming is John, is not really investing in their education on why the company, what their purpose is, and the history, and how they got to be where they are. Organizational effectiveness increases. Of course, there's more opportunities for that, given all the information above. Now, should none of this come to play, the threats to the organization would be high turnover rates. The reputation, of course, would suffer. Production would suffer. Profit margins would decrease. And of course, organizational effectiveness would decrease. Eventually, if no interventions are done, the company would have to close or just be bought out. So that's our SWOT, and we have lots of opportunities, so we're going to take a positive approach on that.
Well, and what our SWOT analysis was presented by Carmen, we came to the conclusion that for our central issue that needs to definitely be addressed is team cohesion, job satisfaction, leadership effectiveness, and definitely communication.
And before we look at solutions, we just wanted to acknowledge that a risk that needs to be measured here is John willing to support the development plan? And so whenever we built out our timeline, we certainly considered him, but we felt like that really as we started developing solutions, that the one thing that we had to know was, is John willing to support the development plan for the organization? So as we began to look at solutions, the first thing that we looked at was improving team meetings. So we want to encourage the teams to meet often and regular, that the agenda is clear and allows time for feedback, and that there's always review of organization mission and connection to the goals. And then another solution we'd like to implement are employee pride efforts. We would like to ask John to come and speak during team meetings about the history of the organization and allow time to meet and greet team members, just building those relationships, also implementing team celebrations, birthdays, longevity, possibly a company picnic with families, and implementing a reward incentive for milestones achieved, like quotas met or organizational milestones, end of the year profits, those type things. And then we also, as part of our solutions, wanted to offer team trainings, particularly conflict resolution training, and then different assessments for individuals and teams. Obviously some assessments for individuals, like personality inventories, but then other assessments that might involve teams, where we could get together and see, how the different personalities or strengths or learning styles all affected the team, and how we could build team effectiveness out of the different parts, the individuals, what they brought to the table. And then it seems like in all these situations that communication is always paramount, and so we wanted to keep the vision, mission, and goals visible, communicate them often, and measure progress. Reinforce team successes, make sure that folks know about those and celebrate those, and encourage John to highlight attributes of a strong culture. So there's quite a lot of research on really what constitutes a strong culture, and so if we could help John to reinforce those things, like trust, like communication, those kind of things, then that will hopefully help to strengthen the culture and also to strengthen his leadership.
Understanding the solutions were set out for us, we need to look here at the importance of the solution we have qualitative data gap. So we look here at axis, and we'll start at the top left. You'll see that they are considered lose-win, win-win, no-lose, lose-lose, win-lose. It's important to point out that there are 5 contributing areas that result in conflict resolution, and we're speaking of a conflict with a lot of times, as we spoke of, reference to some of the teams having the cliquish type environments. We want to look over the differences and the accommodations, and then if we look down to our left on our X and Y axis, we can see that you can find that where you have high and your low on your axis, and what you can see here is we're showing the concern for the relationships, and what concern for the relationships demonstrates what the concern is for the outcomes. As we had a X and Y axis with the quadrants, if we think about that bell, which I started to put on this one, but I said maybe no. But we had the bell diagram where we knew that you have peaks, but we have that standard deviation that we talked about in class, that we can't fake resolution. The conflict that if you do not address the accommodations and the competition, have a collaboration or team coach, which is what case study 16 was speaking of. And the quote from says, either you make the culture or it measures you. So thinking of that particular quote, we're trying to find out, okay, well, effective way and competitions based on the quality. And we looked at 4 key areas of investigating and presenting to John to see if, in fact, he can come up with the team training and some of the things that we spoke about in the solutions when we have the stability versus the flexibility, external, and also there's that consistency versus that external adaptability. We had those circles which were on board and some were not on board. Well, why same page, and why wasn't the culture in a cohesive format? And then, of course, what's very important, mission versus involvement. With that in mind, organization development will present to explain how we need to reach those goals.
Yeah. So as we mapped out the organizational development plan, we tried to look at a one-year time frame. And so the first thing that we need to do is meet with John. Before anything, we need to gain his buy-in and his participation, and then also gather his input for goals and results. So we really want him on our team as consultants as we try to develop this organization. And so before we do anything, we want to meet with John and let him have some input. And then the other recommendations that we are putting out, monthly company meetings, potentially on the first Monday at 8 a.m., and having coffee and donuts, clear agendas, John present, and time for feedback in those monthly meetings. But then we also need a monthly team meeting. And this would involve more like the team members, managers, division directors. And this would be, there's the monthly meetings, and recommended maybe the third Monday right after lunch, and having a birthday cake every month for monthly birthdays. So whatever birthdays are happening that month, celebrate those birthdays and any other celebrations that we can add in. But that this once a month meeting is for team building. But then, as you'll notice, the next thing are weekly team meetings, and that's really the manager and the team members. And recommended maybe Wednesdays at 10 so that we were partway through the week. Everybody had their feet back under them, but yet we still had some work time left in the week. But at this meeting, it was really the opportunity to address project goals, any challenges, getting feedback from team members, and really time to work together on solutions. So we want to meet as the entire company, as teams, a team time to celebrate, but then also weekly team meetings to actually address, opportunities or challenges that the team is up against. Then we wanted to offer quarterly trainings and alternate an individual assessment and then a team training. And so a suggestion would be in January to do like the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs, then in April, the DISC, so how people fall on that 4-quadrant test that shows, we could see how our team is mapped out and how we could work together. July, Strength Finders, and then October, the VARC. But then we also wanted to offer a company-wide training, so just once a year. And this particular year, we'd like to offer a conflict resolution training that the entire company would be a part of. And then in regard to communications, we wanted to be sure that there were several communication boards, TV screens hooked up to a computer in common areas that folks could see different messages and culture cues, also just notes of appreciation, so that people would feel informed, people would know about things that are going on within the organization. So this is sort of a one-year look at what we're trying to map out to develop the parts of the organizational development plan that we had identified through the survey as far as what the opportunities for development for this organization were.
Okay, so following the plan that was discussed, we have some expected outcomes. And of course, it will be a ripple effect and regarding communication and collaboration. The first thing is that John will become more self-aware of inconsistencies in treatment of employees. And then the team will develop greater organizational pride as their confidence in John grows. Therefore, job satisfaction will increase. The turnover rate, the risk will decrease, and participation and collaboration will become the new norm. And seasoned employees will pass that along to new employees, and the culture from there would be reestablished. Organizational effectiveness will increase overall. So this ripple effect is only if the organization and the team follows the plan that the consultants have set in place.
Okay, so this concludes our course case study diagnostics for team intervention and team cohesion and team intervention. If there are any questions, we'll entertain them at this time.
Me.
Oh, Lord.
No, y'all. Anybody else with questions? Go ahead before I get started. No questions? No comments? Excellent job. All right, so let me get started now. Carmen pointed out one of the things that I really need for you to understand. In quantitative data, we define the themes and we collect data in those themes. In qualitative data, the themes define themselves. You have to be careful with that. We talked about that last weekend. But please remember, in qualitative data, it's ex post facto. After the fact, we start looking for themes. Quantitative is a priori. We determine the themes up front that we're looking at. And that's why many people claim that you can't mix the two. One, they are completely separate, and I agree with that, but you can use them in the same study. So we have a study here that has both qualitative and quantitative data. This is an example of a data disconnect. Let me say that again. This is an example of a data disconnect. So let's go back. If you can close, if you can give, let me see. Let me go back and be the host again. So I can thank you. We'll go back to my desktop, share screen. All right. All right. Let's start with our qualitative data. We've got 7 data points here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many are positive? How many are neutral? And how many are negative?
I think they are all negative except one, and one of them is sort of half and half. But
one's neutral and 6 are negative. That's exactly right. That's not good, is it?
No.
But our data disconnect, when we look at our numbers don't look that bad. Why is there a data disconnect here? I can tell you why. Because we wanted it. We didn't want the numbers to come out bad. And so we did what we should never do if we really want to know anything. We gave a 5-point Likert scale. We should never have a scale that has a 3 in the middle, because what does that allow people to do in large numbers? Hide their true feelings.
Right.
And so if I tell my students, if you're going to use a 5-point scale, you have to understand 3 goes with the negative side. There is no neutral in you can have neutral in qualitative because the themes define themselves, but you should never have neutral in quantitative because we're all about the numbers. And so if we move all these neither to agree nor disagree to the left-hand side, to the negative side, we get a closer view. We get a more realistic view of what our qualitative data tells us. So this is just bad methodology. We have a data disconnect because we wanted one. We didn't want the numbers to come out bad. But then the qualitative tells us the story. The real story in this study is in the qualitative data. Again, I tell you, I'm a quantitative person, but in this study, the story is told by the qualitative. It has much more value than the quantitative because we set it up that way. Again, in quantitative, we set up everything a priori, and we designed this study to be able to not to not show us or give us any real hard numbers that give us a true picture of what's going on in this organization. That's just bad. That can't be fixed. Once you do something like this, I tell students all the time, we can only work with what you've got. And you get to design up front, a priori and quantitative. You get to design your methodology up front and define your themes and your questions. And if you do a bad job, there's nothing I can do with you. I can't help you on the backside. After you've already collected your data, it's done then. And this is a perfect example of not a lot I can do here with you on the quantitative side. Not much analysis that can be run on this because you had that middle column. But people normally do that so the numbers won't. That's kind of like trying to steal second but keep your foot on first base. You know, that's playing it safe. That's the whole idea here. If and one of the things that you got to remember as a quantitative researcher is the numbers are the numbers. You got to let them fall where they fall. You know, this is putting your thumb on the scale, making sure that they don't come out too bad. All right, so that's why we have a data disconnect in this one. Now, what you folks did is it appears that you recognized that and you ran with this one as if things were negative, and they are, which is great. That's as an organizationalist, as a consultant, you saw through the hard numbers and you basically designed your presentation around the qualitative, which is what you should have done. You did a SWOT, you did all the things that you should have done based on the qualitative data. The quantitative data would tell you that, that all that stuff wasn't necessary, but the qualitative did demand that you do all the steps that you did. So for that, I commend you. You got it right. This one is negative overall. And yes, you had to follow through with all the steps that you did. I have had teams in the past that said, well, the numbers were pretty good, so we just, basically want to do a little work with John and we're good. No. The numbers are immaterial in this particular study. They are not a true representation of the data. This is the example of where the qualitative data is what's valid in this one, and the quantitative numbers are not, because they were set up to be that way. The instrument is not good. Remember, when your instrument is not good, your data is not valid. It's not about reliability. This is about validity. When your instrument is bad, and when it doesn't measure what you intend to measure, you have a validity problem. This is an example of an invalid instrument. In the case of an invalid instrument, you have to go to your qualitative data. You have to disregard these numbers and go to your qualitative data. And that's exactly what you did. I hope you realize that. Sounds like you did. But yes, this is an invalid instrument. All right, now, bottom line question. Your number one recommendation is you're going to meet with John. For what purpose are you going to meet with John? You said to see if he was willing and had buy-in and all those kinds of things. So what you actually said is you're going to meet with John and evaluate John to see if he's the right person to be leading this team going forward. Is that accurate?
Well, I think my thought was that if we can propose a plan for what's going to develop this organization, but the reason I put in the risk slide was because if we develop this plan that we think is going to strengthen his organization, but he's not supportive and behind it, it could derail the entire thing. So
it won't go. So, right. I don't look at this as John being the CEO. I look at this as John being a member of an organization, a department head, a coordinator, somebody that's, obviously this is a small division, only 12 people. He's not using the executive washroom, let's just say that. He's not too high up in the organization. And the question is generally in most organizations, this is the first level of leadership. Is about 10 or 12 people is usually about the first level that you have. And And so you're going to meet with John, and I would portend that it's about, is John the right person going forward? We can spend all the time and money we want, but if John is not on board with us. If I had to poll you right now, just knowing what you know before you meet with John, is John a yes or no? Before we meet with him, is John a yes or no?
No.
John's a no. John's got to convince you in that meeting. It can't be that you sat and asked him, John, will you do this and that and the other? John's seen this data. What does John have to come in and say to you? I'm willing to do this, that, and the other. And if John doesn't do that, then I would recommend that John be out. See, when you do this as a consultant, you basically have to make a decision on the person before you go in. Now, if you've already decided yes on John, it's more of a collaborative type meeting. If you've already decided no, then John's got to argue his case.
Gotcha. Well, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about who John was. And so we felt like we kind of had to decide how to approach the case. Because if he was the CEO, if he was a VP, if he was just somebody on a team that seemed to have a lot of influence. And so a lot of the things you're saying, I think, could apply to any of those. But there was quite an unknown there that we had.
There he is, and I get that, but normally
that's why we provided the slide that showed win-win situations for whoever was in charge, because we really just put John in.
You're breaking up, M.A.
I'm sorry?
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Oh, I guess it's the connection. It's probably the connection.
All right. In general, you're not going to be brought in to evaluate the CEO. In general, you're not going to be anybody that's on senior staff. You're not going to be brought in. Generally, consultants are brought in to work with lower level people on the first couple rungs of leadership to see if they have the potential to move up in the organization. You're not going to be brought in to look at the president of the college or the CEO, the CFO or CEO. That's generally, this is first level kind of stuff. And for me, John's a no. And John, I would like to meet with John and see if John can convince me. But John has made one of the cardinal sins in leadership. And this will kind of conclude my presentation. John has committed one of the cardinal sins of leadership. That many first-time leaders make the mistake, and for that reason, they don't get to be second-time leaders. He surrounded himself with a group of his friends, and they themselves, he rewards them, and they in turn punish others. He's got an A team, looks like of about 5. And the other 7 are kind of a loose collection of B team, but they're not a cohesive team. They're just kind of floaters out around. But he has a little core group, and that little core group, they punish the others, not sharing information, being a clique. So many first-time leaders, because they're insecure, will form a little clique around themselves. Where they reward those people to kind of defend against others. That's a first-time leadership move. You understand when you move through the levels of leadership that you can't do that organizationally. You can't survive. So that tells me, the qualitative data tells me he's a first-timer, because people who have been in it a while, you won't survive making that first-time rookie mistake of forming a clique around you. And that's what all the data says, is that he has a little group. And that is a rookie mistake. You will see that many times with first-timers. You don't get to be a senior leader by doing things like that. So that kind of concludes. So that tells me John's a lower level person. He's made the mistake that 75 or 80% of first time leaders make of getting them a little group to surround them. It feeds their ego, supports them, gives them moral support for the things that they do. They're not independent leaders that are about the organization. They're only about themselves, and that they're looking inward rather than outward. Leaders have to look outward. Your number one goal is to make sure your department, division, organization survives and thrives, stays alive. But first-time leaders, many times, it's all about them and trying to protect. They finally got the job, trying to protect themselves and looking to the next job, and they make the mistake of forming themselves with a little group of yes people around them. You don't get to be a senior leader by doing that. And so that tells me that John's a lower-level person. But, yeah, John's a no right now, and he's going to have to convince us before we're going to spend all this time and money on him. But this is an example of a data disconnect where the quantitative collection instrument is not valid, and the qualitative data is what you should be looking at in this study. All right, questions for me?
Okay, I have one. I think would it depend on how large the organization is, how much weight you put on 7 comments. I mean, I look and I see seven individuals that are 6 are mainly complaining, and would you not think that it would depend on how big the organization is, just whether they put any really weight on it, or whether they even call John in? I don't know. It's just been my experience that it usually takes a little bit more than that to I don't know, start the process going of checking into things. Am I just jaded or what?
2 points. 2 points. Good question, Carmen. 2 points. Population and sample. Again, it doesn't matter how big the organization is. We're talking about this sample. This is a person that has a 12-person department.
Okay.
Half of them are in open revolt. There's got to be a reason why.
Okay. Well, see, I was going on the assumption that they're, not, since it's a self-report, maybe everybody didn't answer the survey. So could it not be more than 12?
It could be, but our assumption, we have to go with our assumptions is that the big N, the big N is 12.
Okay.
That's the assumption here.
Okay.
The big N is 12. That this is a group of 12. What the larger organization is this may be all there is, and there may be hundreds of others. But in this particular division, we're going with N is 12. Okay. And so
that's what we did. I was just thinking, it could be more than that. Or
it could be, but we don't know that data. This is the data that we know. So that's point number 1. And point number 2 is to get back to what we've talked about before. For some reason, we all do it. We have this notion that because it's self-report, because it's just people's opinion, because it's verbal, but it's not really data. It is really data. Mm-hmm. And it may be stronger than even if this was a valid instrument, because what we're looking at here is the dispositional behaviors of this leader. And that's the qualitative side. Qualitative data is more reliable for dispositional behaviors than quantitative data, because the themes define themselves. Let me say that again. Qualitative data is more reliable, or when we're looking at dispositional behaviors, because the themes define themselves. They're organic. They rise to the top. We didn't set the themes up a priori. We said, tell us something about the organization. We left it open-ended. And the themes define themselves. And we had 7 pieces of data here. 6 of them are exactly the same theme.
Mhm.
6 of them are exactly the same thing. And if we're looking at my screen, if we move these numbers to the left where they should be and don't let them be in that center column, you see you've got pretty much a split of 6 and 6.
Mhm.
So don't discount the strength of dispositional, of qualitative data when we're looking at dispositional behavior.
In the real world, I have seen that ignored quite a bit, and that's why I asked my question.
You're exactly right. And I'll give you an example. And if I've told this story before, please excuse my redundancy. In 1991, federal law was passed called No Child Left Behind. It had a lot of different facets to it for public education, and it has impact and it has implications for schools and colleges, different kinds of organizations, profit and nonprofit. It has a lot of facets to it. No child has to go to a low-performing school, a persistently dangerous school. Children all should have highly qualified teachers. A lot of different parts to it. But one of the things that it mandated was teacher retention efforts. Every state in the union, in their public schools, as an organization, this is not about education now, this is about organizational behavior. They had a section in there on organizational behavior. It's a good exemplar for all of us, whether we know anything about public education or not. And it said, it doesn't do us any good to raise pay, burden taxpayers, raise pay, build buildings, go through teacher preparation, get the best teachers if we can't retain them. It's about job satisfaction, retention. So every state in the union that has a public school system that gets federal dollars must put a program in place organizationally, not about education, but about retaining employees. North Carolina's response to that is the Teacher Working Conditions Survey developed for North Carolina. Other states, including South Carolina, use what's known as the Advanced Ed Survey. Advanced Ed is an accreditation body for public schools and for other colleges and organizations. Those surveys have 12 sections, and they have things like time. I have time to do this. I have time to plan instructionally. They have time. They have facilities. I've got internet connections. They've got resources. I have copy machines. I have access to those things. It has involvement of stakeholders. It has student conduct. It has community support and involvement. It has all of those things in it. It has a section on empowerment for teachers or for employees, but it has one on organization or school leadership. It has a section on them about their dispositional behaviors. Both the Advanced Ed Survey that is used generically nationally, and then the state one in North Carolina has a section on school leadership. And it asks some very pointed questions about the dispositional behaviors of the school leader and school leadership team. Because what we have found is principals or organizational leaders cannot be a satisfier. Back to Hertzberg, theories of motivation, satisfiers and dissatisfiers. But the leader can be a dissatisfier. Let me say that again. You can't be a satisfier. The leader can't be a satisfier. It's about job. It's about working conditions. It's about job conditions. It's about working conditions. It's about the job itself. You can gain satisfaction from that, but you can't gain it from the leadership. But the leadership can be a dissatisfier. So if you understand motivators and hygienes, or satisfiers, dissatisfiers, from Hertzberg, you understand that dispositional bad behaviors of leaders is the biggest reason for poor job or job loss, or not retaining quality employees. A good leader can't make them stay if they don't like the job, but a bad leader can make them leave even if they like the job.
That's true.
So that's why qualitative information about dispositional behaviors is more reliable than quantitative data about dispositional behaviors. This case study I love in that it has quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative is not valid. It was set up not to be valid. But you've got some very, very good and strong qualitative data where the same theme emerges from all the data points. And that data is strong, that data is good, and it's dispositional data that's most important about maintaining and retaining quality employees. And y'all spoke to that in your presentation. But if you want to keep quality employees, this guy's not your guy right now. He's alienated half of his team. They may be the high-performing half for all we know. The low performers, the sycophants, may be the one that's gathered around him in the clique trying to protect their behinds because they're the low performers. May be that the high performers are the ones that are the ones that are unhappy. Generally, you can't know that in this particular one, but in general, that's usually the way it works. So most cases, the people that you're at risk losing with a leader like this are your best performers, not your worst, or your best performers.
Okay.
Turnover rate in public schools is approaching 70%. It's crisis. The federal government recognized that. They also understood that they needed to get some qualitative data on principals and school leaders if they were going to try to stem that tide. And so now a big part of a principal's evaluation is the qualitative data that is used, that the feedback that is given on them. It's not just about test scores anymore, because it doesn't do any good to keep a principal who has a constant turnover of their best teachers. It defeats the purpose of all the other parts of the No Child Left Behind Act. All right. Questions? All right. Who's going to be next? Who am I making host next? Mario. All right.
Are y'all able to see my screen? Or maybe I need to do share.
We see you now. We see you.
Right.
Mr. Walford. He's got his shirt on this morning. In a row.
Okay, there we go.
Did you know that Chris Robinson, the lead singer for the Black Crowes, is a Walford graduate?
Did not know that at all.
You didn't know Chris Robinson or the Black Crowes, did you?
Nope.
You should Google that.
I will. That's awesome. Okay. Rebecca and Rajan, y'all ready?
Yep.
Okay. And so this is our 16A, our diagnosis and intervention. So I'll kind of start off first. If not. Okay. I gotta move some of this. Okay. So we kind of start off with what's happening on the team based off the data that we receive. And so some of the things that we noticed that the team has different views regarding performance and cohesiveness. And so we kind of could see that in the quantitative data and the qualitative data, especially the qualitative data, when there was one positive response, but then most of the other ones kind of had a negative undertone to it. And then also when we were looking at our quantitative data too, we could see that there was some communication and trust lacking in between the team members. And so we kind of knew that there was a little bit of issues going on with the team, with some communication between different meetings and different decisions being made. And so that's kind of where we are when we started off our looking and diagnosing what was going on. What's that going to click? So some strengths and improvements. Our strengths we saw were the mission, understanding the roles, understanding how the team contributes to those goals. Team goals and decisions are clear. Those were things that were based off mainly the quantitative data, but the qualitative data kind of went in and changed a lot of that when we're talking about conflict management, that trust and autonomy, being able to do some of that work on their own, not feeling as a part of the team or finding that sense of belonging. Not feeling empowered or supported, and then again, those team dynamics. And so some of those immediate recommendations were for us is defining what those expectations are, making sure that everybody's actually on the same page. How do we develop some type of communication that is going to be updated and that everyone on the team is on the same page? And then how do we rebuild team cohesion so that everyone feels that they have a valid voice? And then everyone understands how and what the organization is doing throughout their time working there.
All right, so how we would like to present our feedback for the team. We would like to show the quantitative feedback by showing the high score areas versus the low scoring areas. And that we would like to also, of course, use the qualitative data to determine what the themes are. What are the common ideas or words used by the interviewees, and what do these words represent? So we would kind of like to use them both in hand to kind of determine and organize what our theme is, what our themes are. And then the individual concepts and themes found should be put together to build an integrated explanation. And therefore, we will be able to use that explanation to provide support for the analysis by using direct quotes from the example interviews. And then from there, we can present that feedback among the other things that were found to address the concerns or issues of the group. And an example of that, just pulling directly from the quotes that we have from the qualitative data, their answers, is that one thing that we found is that some team members felt excluded. And we determined that because of these quotes. This is a fine team to be on if you are in John's inner circle, or the team is cliquish, or we don't support each other as a team. So those were just some examples that we were able to pull out to find that one theme.
Okay, our recommendation about the team management is the conflict management team. And the reason behind we choose this because we want to provide a supportive change factor, and we have to operating problems of work teams are often sources of efficiency. And we have some goals and objectives of this team, like identified objective and set priorities, examine the team contact or task performance, analyze the group process, how the group is functioning, improve communication and relationship among group members. And also we set like an action plan. We have some objective and we have some procedure activities. Our objective is to conflict management, communication, empowerment, engagement, team dynamic, and trust. our timeline is about like 3 to 6 months, and some procedure and activities to achieve this objective is like we recommend communication skills training. It's so important for each employee to have it, how to manage how to communicate between each other, how to manage their time, how manage their conflict. And also we recommend that some change in group members, like we can make like some small change it between the members. We can put someone in another place if we realize that it's not the right person in the right bus. And also we can make like appreciation parties to offer that we really appreciate your work or your job. And also I highly recommend this, like your voice is valuable. I already did that when I was working at the Diplomatic Institute of Jordan, and it turned out perfect because I just put like a small box on the wall, and I wrote on it like your voice is valuable. Just put your recommendation, but anything you feel not comfortable with it, and I can read it and manage it as I can. So I think it would be good. And also Abyss roses. Also, I used that when I was at the Diplomatic Institute of Jordan. Like if there is any conflict between the team members, I just like brought some roses and give it to the group members. This rose will show how much you want a piece, how much you really love your member, and we just want like a peace environment in this area. Also, we can make like a private meeting with the employees. Like each employee, we can sit together and discuss the issues. And also, I really like the ideas like Carmen did in her office walk and talk. It's like just let us go as a group, walk outside our office, discuss our issues, share our values, our beliefs. It will make the group more closer, and they can become like a family. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone has any question, comments, anything?
I do.
Okay.
You took a more qualitative approach. What is the purpose and the value of having celebrations? These appreciation parties, is that we generically lump those into celebrations. We'll call them appreciation parties. What is the purpose and what is the value? I'm sure y'all have read something about that. What's the purpose and what is the value?
Okay, I tell you what the purpose. The purpose is to just let your group member more close and share some events together. It will make like let's say a family, peaceful environment. And the values, maybe in some point of view, there's not that much of value, but it is, because we deal with the human being, we deal with feelings, we deal with, let's say, we not deal with machines. So it's a human being. You have to take care of them. We have to be close together. We have to listen to each other. We have to share our let's say, celebration, our sad together, and each of all of these things. This
Okay.
is from my perspective, I know.
Well, and I was
Very
going to
good.
add on to that, Razan, too, because I think about affirmation. And so it does seem like a number of the group members want to feel that they're a part of this team, they're a part of this group. And so sometimes that's a way of affirmation, whether you're celebrating a group of people's birthdays like the other group mentioned, or if you are celebrating achievements within the company, because you're kind of putting the spotlight on maybe a particular team, or really depending on if that person wants that type of appreciation. That would be something to figure out as well too. But again, it just kind of affirms. I think it goes back to just a way to affirm that you're a part of this team, that we value your work, your contribution. That's kind of what I was thinking.
I think so too, Demario. And I also think that, everybody has an innate desire, some more than others, to be appreciated. And I think that's just part of our human nature. And when a supervisor realizes that, I think it's a good thing. We've been having these ice cream socials on Fridays at 3:00, and we all gather and just stand around for, 10 or 15 minutes and share some ice cream that somebody made. And I think it really helps build relationships, and we get a few downtime minutes we can talk about work, or we can talk about each other's families or whatever. And I think it just builds camaraderie, and it really helps team cohesion, especially if the supervisor steps outside and joins in the little social.
And also as a leader, you have to let your employee celebrate their achievement. So it's like you're really glad about this achievement. You're really proud of them. So it's important.
So the purpose is team building. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Team building and appreciation.
Team building and appreciation. All right. So the purpose of these appreciation parties is team building and appreciation.
Well, I think it's more to it than team building too. I think it's it really helps you continue to be vested in the organization because it's allowed.
It's organizational building.
Right. I think it's deeper than just team building.
Relationship building.
Relationship building. All right.
Communications skills.
Communication. So your argument then is that these have a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I will accept your premise. All right. Now, if I accept yours, then you're required to accept mine. And my premise is they have great value, but unfortunately, anything that has great value can also have great negative value. What about if you had appreciation events and parties, and especially things that a lot of money were spent on, but not everybody was eligible to be appreciated and celebrated and for any of the rewards that come along? Could that happen in an organization?
Yes.
All the time.
It happens all the time. And so we make this mistake as leaders, thinking that if I buy them shirts with logos on it, or if I buy them lunch, or if we have these celebration parties, that everybody's going to be happy, that I have recognized everybody the same. These generic appreciation parties do have value, but unfortunately they can have just as much negative impact on your organization. I'll give you an example. I participate in pretty much everything that goes on this campus. If there's a meeting, I'm there. I go to faculty meetings. I go to chapel. I go everywhere. I do the Lent service. I mean, I like going and doing things here. there's only one thing here that I consciously boycott.
Accolades, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I will not go.
Mm-hmm.
Why not, Carmen?
Well, because it's unfair to those that are not recognized that work hard. I don't like it either.
I refuse to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's only the eligible people to be recognized and rewarded is a small group of which I am not a part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need it. This is not my primary. I've already had my career, but I see way too many people, hardworking staff people, who get no way that that are not undergraduate professors that in no way can be recognized and rewarded for their hard work that keeps this organization together. I'm thinking about some certain people, particularly that I see just killing it here every day. That they're not in. It's not that. I mean, they can't be, because they're it excludes certain groups, and so the notion of appreciation parties is that because they can be positive, they can also be negative. And as a matter of course, I boycott those because, for example, we have a young man who is our administrative assistant here in the School of Education, who works harder than 95% of us who work here, and he can never be rewarded at apples and accolades. He's not eligible, and he's part of the glue that holds this place together. So we take him to lunch usually twice a month in the regular year, and once a month we'll take him next Friday. We take him to lunch to show him that. But I would rather the organization did that. I mean, I can afford to take him to lunch, but it would mean more if the organization recognized his hard work and dedication to the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a disincentive for him. I mean, apples and accolades is kind of like a slap in the face to people like him.
I agree.
And so you have to be that as an organizational function to speak to job satisfaction and retention. That's a double-edged sword, folks. You need more than just, you've got other things here on your page, but that kind of is your centerpiece. You need to be careful. You need to make sure that everybody can be recognized equally if they do a good job. That just certain. I'm not saying that we give everybody a trophy here. What I'm saying is there's certain classifications or categories of employees. Make sure you don't exclude those categories when you're doing these appreciation. That just as a matter of function, this particular group can't be recognized because they don't fit in the right group. Mm-hmm. Make sure that if they do a good job, no matter what role they play in the organization, they have the opportunity to be rewarded. I had a graduate professor who knows that I'm on the finance committee asked me a question the other day, and he said, how the finances look? And I said, not good. He said, is that the reason why I'm not considered for promotion? I said, I can't tell you that. There's not really a job-free zone. I believe that it was said that there's a soft freeze that they can hire more if they look at it and can justify, but that I don't. There's an extra layer of scrutiny, I believe, is what was said in the faculty meeting. Is there's not a freeze, there's an extra layer of scrutiny. Well, we understand that, but the question came to me from a faculty member, a graduate faculty member, was why is it that I can't be considered for promotion because I'm on the graduate faculty instead of undergraduate? And I said, I have no idea. I don't know that it's a money thing. But he said, well, I'm not eligible for reward for my hard work and behavior. I said, that is correct. Folks notice things like that. Mm-hmm. And when you have events that reward certain people, it only kind of twists the knife. It makes it worse. And so as a matter of course, I'm not a contrarian. Well, I guess I am a contrarian. If you ask my wife of 33 years, she'd tell you I am. But as a matter of course, I'm a pretty good organizational person. But I can't go along with accolades. Just can't do that. It's institutional discrimination is what it is. That's not right in any. That's just wrong. Be careful that your appreciation and your celebrations doesn't become some form of institutional discrimination against people or groups of people in your organization. So good can be bad. You need to always understand that. Good can be bad.
They always invite those that have retired. So Bob simply goes to visit with, he always says, I sat with the old guys.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's his reward for going to Apples and Accolades, is to sit with the old guys and catch up.
Yeah, that part I like. But as I've been here, you know, the longer I stayed here, the more I understood that there's a lot of hardworking people that got excluded. And it, you know, I remember one of the first years that I was here on campus. See, I worked 5 years for Gardner Webb on other campuses before I came here. And when I first came here, after the first year, one of the things is I said something to one of the employees here, the staff, and she said to me, well, we don't go to that. We're not invited. And I said, oh, my goodness. How can that be? How can we be that short-sighted? That's not a good thing. And then I found out who actually does the work of this organization, which is the staff people around here. And I realized that, you know, in good conscience, I can't go. See, I believe that if you're a Christian, you act as if you are 7 days a week, not just going to church on Sunday. I preached a sermon one time at St. Mark's, a local church in a district where I was high school principal, and I preached a sermon on Sunday. And good thing I didn't work for them because they'd fired me. They wanted to run me out of town. But I simply asked. I was asked, what, you know, as a church community, what can we do to help the school and help and to help with student achievement? I said, in student behavior, I said, it's real simple. I need for you to teach your children that Christianity is 7 days a week. It's not just about going to church on Sunday. It's about how you live your life the other 6 days. And it's not okay to just live and behave any way you want to from Monday to Saturday, as long as you go to church on Sunday. That's not the way it works. That's not Christianity. And of course, that kind of called that church and its membership out. They weren't too pleased with that. But that's my view of Christianity. Is it's an everyday thing of how you live your life. It's about the values that you have. It's the same way in organizations. It's, you know, organizational behavior is like Christianity in that it's an everyday thing. It's about how you treat and interact and how you conduct yourself every day. You got to understand that. It's about a fundamental sense of justice and equity, of ethics, whether, you know, and belief in a higher power, whatever that higher power is that you should be, you know, strive to be a good person. And
was your first sermon your last?
Yeah, there? They didn't invite me back. Yeah, I think I might have also mentioned that, you know, you should be concerned about where the money in the collection plate comes from. You shouldn't be taking money from drug deals. Maybe that was it. That one probably got it too. That probably didn't make me a real proud favorite there. That it wasn't okay. That we need to be, you know, that we need to be preaching in the pulpits against drugs and drug dealer and illegal behavior in communities, and that we couldn't be silenced just because they came and put some money in the collection plate. That made it okay. That too many of our young kids were involved in drug trafficking in that community, and that the churches were overlooking it because those people would put money in the collection plate, that we couldn't continue to do that. That might have made them madder than, you know, live your Christianity every day, not just go to church on Sunday. That could have been it. Of course, there were a couple more things, and so I think by the time I left, I had insulted everybody, or I tried to. Anyway. That was my intent.
I'll ask you offline what your third point in your poem was.
Oh, me. So, yeah, I got them all. I prefer the shotgun method. I just get everybody. I just look at the data, folks, and interpret it. That's all I can do. I'm a numbers guy, and this is what the data tells me. And so, they always told me bit dog hollers the loudest. So if I got you, that's on you, not on me for pointing it out. All right, I see our time is up. We actually finished up 8 minutes early today. Does anybody have anything to go to the group? If you'll let me be the host again so I can end us up, I won't keep you all day. Before we go, let's look at one more thing before we go, as we always do. Let me go back to my desktop here and move that out of the way. Let's see. Yeah, I see that got closed somewhere along the way, which is not a problem. Let's look at our last, we're halfway through now. Let's look at our last 5 weeks. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way here. We'll look at our last 5 weeks and see where we are. Let me move that back now. Move it back up. All right. So we've now completed week 5. Next weekend, we'll be back on main campus for our last 2 sessions, 4 and 5 for the summer. I'll see if I can't get us a room over. Seriously, I'll see if I can't get us a better room over in Frank Nanny Hall. I'll see who has that. So that's what's happening next weekend. And so you're to be working. You should be in Merriam now. Some of you, 3 of you have already done the first section of Merriam. Remember those, because there's multiple questions, the Merriam discussion boards, those are worth 300 points. The first one that you got. And so you should be moving into the second half of Merriam next week in week 6. Week 7, we'll Zoom again on Saturday, July the 7th on our case study data gathering. You'll do a PowerPoint and reflection. Week 8, the 9th through the 15th, you'll be at home. You'll be working on the Ayers book, Super Crunchers, and I have a series of questions for that. The 9th week, you'll be at home, and you'll be doing the Quants book, Keeping Up with the Quants by Davenport. Again, I have a series of questions for those. And then our last week, I always like to end up with a Zoom on Saturday, July the 28th at 9 a.m., case study giving feedback. Now, I get into this every semester, and so I want to make sure that we're clear. Our last day is the 28th. Blackboard stays open until the Monday or Tuesday after graduation, usually, and that's second week and the first full week in August. You can continue to put work in, but at some point I have to turn grades in. And when I have to turn grades in, if you haven't finished your work, I can only go on, so I can only guarantee you that I can consider what comes in until the 28th of July. So just like last semester, I had a student, that turned a lot of work in late after the actual last class day. And then she was angry that there was a deduction for turning work in late. Well, by the time I had to turn grades in, I could only go by what I had. So I will grade your work. You will get credit for your work that comes in after the 28th, but you may not get full credit because I have to when they say turn grades in, I have to turn grades in. And I will I always wait till the last minute to do that, to give you as much opportunity as I can. But when the registrar says final grades are due today, they go in. When I get that email, I put them in right immediately then. So I never know when that email's coming. Sometime, but I, for full credit, get everything in by the 28th is what I'm telling you. After that, it's a crapshoot after that. Okay, so everybody knows what we're going to be doing the rest of the semester, where we are. And so I will see you again next weekend here on main campus. If we change to Frank Nanny Hall over here, I'm going to walk over there and see what's going on. If we go over there, I will let you know. And if we can move over there into a room that I don't have to spend an hour and a half getting all the seats up from off the floor and move all the tables and do all that stuff. And a place that's supposedly nicer and has better heat and air conditioning control, but we'll see about that. All right.
For those that aren't familiar with campus, it's literally just where we all kind of park. It's just the building right across the parking lot there. Just right on the other side.
Yeah, it's just across the street. I mean,
across the street.
It's literally right there. It's what, 20 yards, about 4 car lengths right over there. It's right here. When you park, instead of turning left into Craig, you turn right into Frank Nanny Hall. You can't miss it. It's right here. And so I'll see if I can secure us a room over there so we won't have to put up with all the stuff up in 209. All right. I believe that's it for me. Anybody have anything else for the group? All right. I'm going to stop the share. I'll end the meeting, and y'all all have a good weekend.
Thank you.